This is a story all about the history of blue, ultramarine, and indigo. Now let's travel back in time, before the 2nd century AD. Very little blue existed in the ancient world. Blue foods were virtually non-existent, blue flowers were rare, and blue clothing was nearly impossible to make.
Because of the lack of blue, it was not named for a very long time. This is evident in the Odyssey and Iliad, where Homer did not mention the color blue at all, despite the setting being around water. Eventually, Rabbi Meir named blue in the 2nd century AD, but it was extremely broad and encompassed anything from turquoise to purple.
In European languages, the word for blue comes from black. Usually things that were described as blue were perceived as black or green. The sky was even described as black or green, and a blue sky was unheard of because they lacked a concept of the color beyond the sky.
Blue in foods is usually an indication of something bad. There are only a handful of blue foods that are edible, otherwise the rest are poisonous. The only edible blue foods are blueberries, blue corn, blue cheese, and blue potatoes, although blue corn and blue potatoes lean more towards purple.
Now let's go back a little further, the 7th millennium BC. We're in ancient Afghanistan, and we have just discovered this cool new metamorphic rock called lapis lazuli. It is an intense colored stone and is highly valued by the Indus Valley civilization. It ends up being used in many other civilizations, most notably on the Mask of King Tut.
Lapis lazuli is found in limestone in the Koksha River Valley of Badakhshan province in northeastern Afghanistan, where the Sari Sang mines have been excavated for more than 6,000 years. The ancient Egyptian and Mesopotamian civilizations, as well as the later Greeks and Romans, all obtained lapis from Afghanistan by trading.
The word for blue in several languages was derived from lazuli. Azur in English, azur in French, azzurro in Italian, and azul in Spanish. Once the pigment is mixed with a liquefying agent, it is called ultramarine, which literally means over the sea, which is a reference to the journey it made from Afghanistan to Venice.
A few centuries go by, and towards the end of the Middle Ages, lapis lazuli is being exported all over Europe to be ground into a pigment, which created ultramarine, now known as the finest of all blues. It was extremely expensive, and it was used by some of the most important artists of the Renaissance and Baroque era.
In fact, artists like Leonardo da Vinci, Masaccio, Titian, and Vermeer would require that their clients and patrons supplied ultramarine as part of their contracts, and they would often save the pigment for clothing of central figures, especially the Virgin Mary.
Salvator Mundi, a Renaissance-era painting by Leonardo da Vinci, was auctioned in 2017 and sold for $450 million. The painting, whose name translates to Savior of the World, depicts Jesus Christ, who is clothed in ultramarine blue.
Today, lapis lazuli is mostly mined in Afghanistan and Pakistan, but important amounts are also produced from mines west of Lake Baikal in Russia and in the Andes Mountains in Chile. Smaller amounts are mined from Italy, Mongolia, the United States, and Canada.
Of course, with ultramarine being so expensive, not every artist could afford to use it. While looking for a cheaper alternative to ultramarine, Prussian blue was made. It was non-toxic and could be used as an antidote to thallium or radioactive cesium poisoning.
Let's spend a little time with the color indigo. It was once the most important dye in the whole world. It is produced from a plant called woad and comes from the Greek word meaning India. It probably existed in the Indus Valley over 5,000 years ago, but was called Nila, which means dark blue.
In different cultures, indigo was used for different things. For example, in ancient Egypt, mummies were wrapped in indigo-dyed cloths, while in Central Asia, it was the main color for carpets. In Africa, indigo was used in the Tuareg people's headscarves, and the bluer the headscarf, the higher the social standing.
Indigo was used as currency during the slave trade in Africa. A length of cloth was exchanged for a human body. Slaves then carried indigo over to America, where, in the 1700s, profits from indigo outpaced those of sugar and cotton. During the American Revolution, indigo had more strength than the dollar bill.
Interestingly enough, even though indigo was used in the original American flag, by World War II, indigo was used for dye in blue jeans, which symbolized the lowly workers of the mines in the West. Eventually, jeans became a staple of everyday life, and the world embraced blue jeans.
In 1824, the Société d'Encouragement offered a reward of 6,000 francs to anyone who could develop a synthetic ultramarine. Although 2 men came forward and they fought with one another for the prize, it eventually was given to Jean-Baptiste Guillemet, and the synthetic formula was called French ultramarine.
Nowadays, the synthetic pigment has a richer tone than the natural pigment. It is readily available and costs no more than any other color pigment, something that would have been beneficial to Vermeer, who ran his family into debt because he used the expensive pigment wastefully.
Scientists have discovered a cell in our bodies that reacts to blue light. Because of a light sensitivity complex that this particular cell has, blue light can be used as treatment for seasonal affective disorder, premenstrual syndrome, dementia, eating disorders, and depression.
Blue light is also used to help blind individuals. The visually impaired are urged to go outside because the blue light of the sky helps keep their internal clock on track and helps them avoid mixing up day and night.